Okay, we are in. Just gonna go full screen. And yes, hello everyone, and welcome again to another podcast, Video Game Anatomies episode. It's been a while since the last one. And yes, we are back with another topic, but I'm just gonna introduce my sole guest for tonight. This is again GetRektByMartie. He has
Hello.
he has come back. He was missing in action last time around, and now he's the only one here because everyone kind of had their own thing. Like life came and booted everyone who was planning to come out. Some people went on dates. Some people went to see their girlfriends. Some people stayed up late to actually work and work overtime. So I applaud that. But as I said, life sometimes does get in the way. So we dwindled a little bit in our numbers, but luckily my good old dependable Mr. Marty is here. Mostly because
Yes.
Friday nights he just chills, so it's fine. But anyway, our topic for today, a pretty big topic actually. Skill trees, skill progression in games. We got to have these skills to pay the bills. And skill progression in games is almost a game within the game itself. It's like the mini game because it challenges you to try and figure out, what you want to do in a game. Do you want to play like this or do you want to play like that? How do you suit your play style? What are what are your abilities and skills and going to be that's going to determine your gameplay? It determines a lot of things, and it could be that for you. You could be so careful with it, and you could like tweak it around a little bit and figure out what works the best for you, or you could just be chaotic and like, oh, I'm gonna pick that skill next and that skill next and that skill next as soon as I level up, and then just mix and match, kind of like a mad scientist. So yeah, I'm gonna start off with two questions right now, right off the bat, just to get the discussion flowing and going. But it'll set the scene for us. So first off, when we're playing a game, let's say it's an RPG, it's a shooter, any other genre you can think of, are you the type of person to actually spend time reading the skills, selecting your skills, being careful about your choose, and if you select those skills,
Not at
like
all.
the progress. So you're just the type of person. I'm just gonna pick that skill. That sounds cool.
Okay, so I do look at a top heading of whatever. Let's say this one is like for magic, this one's for combat, this one's for sneak. I mean, that's the only thing I really look at, and when I see the skill branch I want to apply, just let's just let it go.
I think that's like it's fair to assume. It's like if your thing is just to get back to the gameplay and you just want to have general mostly gameplay, it's not going to bother you
Yeah.
all that much, focusing too much on the
And
skills.
yeah, I usually figure out exactly what's the skill throughout the gameplay just by random chance.
Yeah, try on error basically.
Yeah.
So that's the first question. I think myself, it depends on the game. Again, shooters don't even bother with a skill tree with a shooter. For me, I'm here to shoot. I think RPGs, if you do it right, a skill tree can be really cool. But again, at the end of the day, an RPG, all your skill trees you really do is determine like what type of playstyle you are. For example, if like you say, if you want to be sneaky, I'm going to pick sneaky skills, and obviously you can just tell me it's a skill for sneaking or for being stealthy and stuff
Yeah.
like that. You don't have to like go far into detail with me with that. You can just tell me, oh, it's a stealthy skill. Oh, okay, great. I'm a stealthy person, so I'm just gonna pick that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's more or less my stance on it, and I think. But again, people do have their differences. People spend lots of time sometimes on skill builds, or they'll make entire videos on like this is the best way to be like a highest damage per second, person or the tank of the unit or whatever when it comes to RPGs. Second question.
Yeah.
When we're talking actually about this, and we did touch on this right now, some skill trees, especially in RPGs, has really deep progression. Like we're talking about, it's layers and layers and branches full of skills that like overlap into each other or kind of complement each other and stuff like that. Say you are a stealth build and you start with just a simple sneaking skill. Then you start to go with silently killing people. Then you start to go with silently killing a group of people. Then you start to go down and down and down and down. Do we think that it's maybe better for games to focus on this deep progression builds where you can go really, really far into your skill set, or do we think they should stick to the more simple stuff where it's like just have a simple-ish skill tree with a bunch of options to pick and choose from, and people can progress through the game and pick what they want on a more surface level, but rather enjoy the gameplay? Which of the two would you say sounds better to you?
Well, in my opinion, in some aspects, I'd rather have just a simple tree bonus thing that actually covers a little bit more than actually making, for example, 3 skills for that could be 1.
I
I
think,
mean,
yeah.
in short games, it would be more logical to actually just make a short tree bronze with just simple things. But in an actual game that can take maybe days of play and things, it could be more legible to actually make a whole lot of skills in another skill level thing.
I used to be like this, like where most of the time I just wanted a simple skill tree. No, pick one, choose my skills as I go on and stuff like that. And I like so much. I think the first deep progression game I've tried was Elder Scrolls Online. It has really deep skill tree progression. Actually, also Witcher 3, but I didn't really play Witcher 3 properly enough to like look at the skill trees and stuff. But ESO Online or Elder Scrolls Online had a really deep skill progression, especially when it comes to a few builds, because a lot of the stuff you're doing as like PvP stuff and PvE stuff. So you're playing like 4 people, 6 people in dungeons and like really high intensity stuff, and you need this guy to be the best damage, this guy needs to absorb the most damage, this guy needs to be the healing guy, this guy needs to be the fastest, whatever. So you needed these guys with the deep skill progression that's like been doing it since level 1. Like they've been leveling up their health, they've been leveling up their stamina, they've been leveling up their magic, whatever they needed. And they need to go really deep with their skill trees, because like some stuff regens health, some stuff regens magicka, some stuff drains magicka and health and stuff. So like they needed to be really clever so that they could coordinate and stuff like the dungeons and get all the rewards and stuff. That's the first game I've really taken thought about it, but in the end of the day, I would still say like I didn't pay too much attention to it, because I was like, I just want to go back to the actual game. I want to play the game. I don't want to sit in the skill tree and rack my brain and like and just sit there the whole time. I like to play the actual game, not the game within the game all that much. And then, actually, just a quick question. That wasn't the second question. I just read my script again, and that was a follow-up. So, whoopsie. The second question, in terms of what a skill tree does in a game, what do you think does it have the biggest effect on? Like in a game, like any game, if you put a skill tree in a game, what's the biggest thing it's always going to affect for you?
Well, basically how you progress through something. When you always complete something, no matter what game you're playing, but it's just going to affect how you complete a certain part of the game.
Yes.
Let's say, for instance, if you're more combat type, you can let's say there's a scenario where there's a few enemies you need to take out. I mean, if you're more the combat skill type, you're probably gonna just go right for them, kill them all.
Yeah.
And if you live up stealth, you'll probably just sneak behind them, kill them all, and then go progress further.
Yeah.
So no matter which skill you pick, you'll still progress for the same thing, but just another way.
Yeah. Now, I do agree with that definitely, and I want to even take that a little further. I think a game's replayability also is majorly impacted by skill trees. And I think also if you put a skill tree in a game, because it affects the gameplay so deeply, I think if you have a good skill tree or a bad skill tree, that's gonna really bring your gameplay up and down. Like you don't have to pay attention to skill trees, you can do that. But I think the big thing it does is replayability, and I'm gonna explain why now. But yeah, for some games are by design, you don't need a skill tree. So for example, in my opinion, shooters don't really need a skill tree. You can go on in a shoot without a skill tree. Platformers, you can go on in a skill tree. Sports games, you can go on without a skill tree, really. That type of stuff. Like you get these few games where like a skill tree isn't really that necessary. I'll give you like another example. You remember the WWE 2K games? They weirdly have skill trees now. I don't really pay attention to those all that much because I just want to wrestle and stuff like that. So I think there are games that like are better off without it. They can do it with their narrative. They can do it with their lore, their combat, their story, the dialogue. There's a lot of things that a game can do that they don't need a skill tree for. But the reason I said replayability is, say you have this RPG, right? But you can unlock all the skills possible, in a single playthrough. And you slay the dragon, you get the princess, the credits roll of the game, right? You unlocked all the skills. What are the odds if the skill tree was the biggest part of the game, what are the odds that you would go and replay that game, knowing that whatever you do, you're going to be playing it the exact same way as you did the first time?
Yeah, true.
So, just as an example,
So
yeah,
so basically, depending on what skill tree you choose, I mean, it's just that actually most terms only going to affect your gameplay once, because you're most likely not going to go back just to pick
do it
another
again.
skill tree.
Yes. So, like an easy
Yes.
example, imagine Skyrim had only two-handed weapons. You could only wear heavy armor. You could only like upgrade a certain thing. How many times do you think you would play Skyrim if you could only do these things instead of being a magicka, an archer, a mage, a stealth guy, a one-handed weapon, a two-handed weapon? Like Skyrim has this whole thing, this beautiful thing that makes it so simple, but it's so effective that like your playthroughs just goes like this, just because you can be so many type of play styles just through its simple skill tree all at once.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
it's exactly that, the way that you can replay the game but say, oh,
I mean,
this time
yeah.
I want to go a completely different direction.
And most of the external objects are also connected to the skill trees as well.
Yes.
Like pickpocketing and those type of things.
Exactly. And pickpocketing improves your skill actually in your skill tree. Like
Yes.
if you keep doing it, like practicing, your skill becomes better, which rewards
Yes.
you for playing like that and rewards you by making you better at that. Very simple, but very effective.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, so this is how really the success recipe lies in a lot of RPGs for how they're playing. And yeah, we have a starting point for skill trees. Luckily, it's not like some fuzzy mechanics we've had in the past where like we said, oh, it's most likely been there, or oh, we saw it for the first time here, but we're not too sure. We do have definitely a set point where skill trees began for the first time, and we're gonna revisit a concept for the first time since episode 1. We're gonna say hello again to tabletop gaming. Now, in episode 1, when we talked about tabletop gaming, we talked about specifically Dungeons and Dragons, how dialogue. What was it? What was it? Dialogue? No, the health bar. I'm thinking of the wrong episode.
The first one was anatomy.
No, it was the health bar. The health bar was the first episode, and that was done by Dungeons and Dragons tabletop gaming. Now, another tabletop game.
But we did talk about it.
Yeah, but another tabletop game came out in 1980, which introduced a type of skill tree for the first time. If you had to take a complete random guess, any board game, what board game do you think brought skill trees for the first time? And don't say Monopoly. It's not Monopoly.
Could be some type of mystery game.
Okay, no,
or
it's not a mystery game.
Oof.
Okay, I'll try and give you some hints. It was, these type of skill trees are called technology trees. Board game is still a video game franchise that's still going, and these types of games are the ones where you control armies and troops and you build cities and stuff like that. That's the type of game genre. Almost. It was not Risk, it was Civilization.
Civilization.
Yes, Civilization in 1980. The British game designer Francis Tresham was thinking about this game concept all over in his head. It's like, you know what? It would be really interesting. Like, you can have your troops fight out against each other and develop civilization stuff like that. But you know, it would be really interesting if we can make it somehow a possible game concept where you have this kind of investment of your resources, be it the resources you've gathered, some sort of resources you picked up somewhere during levels and stuff like that. But if you could invest that into the improvement or the development of some sort of skills in the game, and to how that directly affects the abilities of the troops and of everything in your game, and how that could provide unique gameplay. So you can see this concept really churning the wheels out. And 42 years onwards, we're still working with this concept very closely. And a lot of games are still working with this concept. So he had a really big idea at the cusp here, just in a really strange genre to begin with, because I mean, we're talking about Civilization, this is turn-based strategy games. Not the first one, obviously, to come to mind when it comes to skill trees. Turn-based strategy is all about, oh, it's your turn to do a strategy thing. I'm going to build, or I'm going to attack, or I'm going to defend, or something. So you don't really put it in your mind that that's where skill tree stuff would start, but it did. So that was quite an interesting one, and really well done for Francis Tresham for thinking about that, because it just allowed so much more for gaming. So replaying the game and be able to say, oh, what if I do this, or what if I build up like that? So yeah, it's technically a board game, so I wouldn't say the turn-based strategy was the first genre to do it, because this is a board game. So yes, you invented a concept, but you were still a board game. You're not a digital genre like I would suggest. And Civilization would only go digital in 1991, 11 years after the board game did it. So,
yeah,
what gaming genre do you think actually did skill trees for the first time?
Well, I think a very popular answer would probably be some type of MMORPG or something like that. But it also seems some type of platformers do it.
So I'm gonna say it's during the 1980s. If that helps.
Yeah, and those times, kind of like one-objective missions. I mean, games and platformers are kind of.
So it was not a platformer. It's kind of a trick, funny question, and I know it's gonna be a little bit ironic. It was the shooter genre that did it first. Of all the genres that we talked about, that's the kind of the last one also in my mind that did it. But the shooter genre, a little bit of a weird concept right there, that they did it. It was done by Gradius in 1985, one of the more primitive arcade shooters out there, and it was incorporating this concept. It was also, in its sense, more fundamental than the one Civilization had, those technology trees, because the technology trees were all about research. You go advanced research, you can better your troops, better your city, better your defense, all that kind of stuff. Gradius, because it's a shooter, focused on something way more simple. Basically what it did was, during your gameplay, the gun you used, how you perform with that gun would directly improve the gun statistics. So the more you played, the more the statistics of your gun improved, and it could offer you to level up the gun. And if you kept using the gun, it would keep leveling up. But if you pick up another gun, you keep leveling up that one. But if you pick up the other gun again, it's reset. So it was a very interesting concept at the time, because besides the generic power-ups that we usually see in the game, remember, as you said, this was the time of platformers. You had, all the generic power-ups. You had invincibility, you had like those points bonuses, you were talking about maybe like super damage, super jump, think of the Super Mario type of things. That was like the generic power-ups. Now this game did something really unique, because it's a deep, rewarding progression. Say I continue to use this weapon that I've been using since the beginning of the game. I keep performing well with it. I keep getting kills with it. I keep, being accurate with it. I get directly rewarded because my weapon gets to improve. So there's a direct correlation, because how I play rewards the skills that I get to reap from my leveling and progression during the game. And this is something that was also very simple, but very effective. But it also directly affects your playstyle. You can go in there with a high damage shotgun if you want to, and if you could keep shooting people with that shotgun and its damage would go up. You could go in there with a rapid fire machine gun, and probably its fire rate would go up, or its accuracy would go up. So it directly meant that you could play with any weapon, and you didn't have to discard that weapon because all of a sudden, oh no, I can't kill the enemies anymore because my weapon doesn't work. So it had a really rewarding thing there in terms of what it did. And obviously a lot of shooters pick up on this. One of the most famous ones that still do it is Doom. I don't know if you've played Doom before, but your weapons also improve the more you use it, essentially.
Okay.
Because like the newer Doom does give you the opportunity of, you could, improve any weapon you want based on some points you get. But the whole idea is there. It directly improves your weapon damage and stuff. And obviously, you're probably more inclined to put it on weapons that you're more frequent to use. Say hello to Peanuts, everyone, who's churning his wheel.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. He's part of the podcast now. Hang on, just let me get. Now, this isn't an OnlyFans, everyone. I'm just extremely hot, both physically and figuratively. So, yeah. Anyway, continuing this thing. As we said, it is a little bit unexpected to think that shooters did this first. As I said, not really the first genre to come to mind. And you can imagine, yeah, you can imagine when it comes to shooters and that, it's not also the exact type of genre where we see a lot of longevity with this type of concept. Like, I don't know what else you could do much of skill trees when it comes to shooters, because obviously if your whole aspect is shooting, that means your skills have to mostly lie with your guns. And I mean, how much can you actually do with skill trees when it comes to guns and stuff? Like, I'm not saying there's not games that haven't done really well with this. Like, I can name Borderlands, really well done with the guns and stuff like that, because it's so insane how to think of that. And Gradius and Doom, just simple concepts but very effective. And even something like Fallout New Vegas and even some other Fallout games, really well done stuff with the guns. So I'm saying it's possible, but I'm saying not every single game out there can do it. Not every shooter out there will be able to do it or make something unique when it comes to skill trees. So there's not a lot of longevity at that time that was there for it. So obviously, when you think about it, shooters really had one focus, and that was shooting. I don't think during a World War II game you'd be able to convince Hitler to give up Berlin using your dialogue in a shooter game. Or I don't think you can bribe Stalin to give up Russia, you know? That's just not stuff that happens in shooters. So,
no.
We are thinking of two games or two gaming genres in mind that would only carry the skill tree thing forward. That would be RPGs and strategy-based games. And that they did.
Yeah.
First off, we'll talk about the RPGs in the mid-90s. We're talking about where they were based off of the popular Dungeons and Dragons. We're talking about they are skills in Dungeons and Dragons where the character you choose is like, oh, I'm an orc, so I don't know what orcs would do in Dungeons and Dragons. I'm imagining they have some sort of ugly power like Shrek, where you're actually handsome, and then you like charm everyone. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, it's this way the skills and stuff really started to bring. But we're gonna go on a slight tangent here because there was actually one more game right before the RPGs took off of it. In 1991, they would incorporate skill and technology trees, and perhaps may have been kind of the last spark we needed to say, yes, skill trees forever. Because this game was called Megalomania. It's recognized as the world's first real-time strategy game. Now, the difference obviously between turn-based strategy and real-time strategy games. Turn-based strategy, everyone gets a turn to play. It's like what you said with Risk. Risk is a turn-based strategy game. Everyone gets a turn to do it. It's like also Worms is one of them. Everybody gets a turn. Like, it's your turn, it's your turn, it's your turn. Real-time strategy, obviously in the name, it's all real-time. Everyone's doing everything at the same time, and it's happening in real time. So that's kind of the just the main difference there, just to separate the two concepts. And are there any you've played before when it comes to real-time strategy? There is a really famous franchise, but I'm curious. I don't really remember you've played any before. That's why I'm wondering.
I don't think so.
The only really famous one you probably know is Age of Empires, but I'm not sure if you've ever played that.
I've played Age of Empires before.
Have you? Okay.
Yes.
That's probably the most famous one, but that's not the one in 1991. This is now Megalomania. But I bring this up because there was something really interesting with Megalomania, more than just the fact that it's the first one ever and it did skill and technologies. There's a very interesting story behind this. So Megalomania was released in 1991, but a lot of people were coming out and scrutinizing the game like, oh, you know, it's very similar to a game called Populous that was released in 1989 or 1990. Populous is an isometric game, so that just means like it's kind of top down with these sort of like it's got a specific view. I'm trying to think of a game that you would have played that has that sort of view. Do you remember that game, Crossy Road?
Yes.
It's kind of that view is almost isometric. That's more or less the type of view that isometric is. It's kind of these blocks that you jump on with almost angled top down. That's isometric. But yeah, that's just the thing. Populous was also the first of those games where you were in God mode. I don't know if you know what God mode really is. It's just like you can build everything you want. You can build a big city. You can build a big world and stuff like that.
Sense.
So it was the first one that did that, and it directly controlled everything that was happening in the game. It's also one of the best-selling PC games ever, and I'm not making this up. This game was released in 1990, Populous. It is, to this day, it's still outsold Age of Empires, Dark Souls, GTA V. It outsells GTA V on PC, and it's, what's it now, 32 years old. So I cannot stress enough how well this game sold at the time. But yes, there was an appeal behind it. Now, I've talked about this because the gaming media, the journalists, the public called Megalomania a Populous clone. They said, you copied Populous. Like, we can see the similarities between the two games, and like, it's not even like funny. It like looks like direct plagiarism or something. Now, you can imagine, the Megalomania designers came out, they defended the game, they're like, no, it's not true. But they defended it in a really funny way. I'm going to tell you why. I am literally directly quoting here what the Megalomania designer said. He said, they stated that the game was not like Populous at all, and that the concept of human evolution is not unique to Populous because Earth invented it first. That was their argument. They said, no, we didn't take human evolution from Populous because it came from Earth first. So no, free rights. We can use it. Which is really funny. So I guess you can settle an argument like that if you want to be that pedantic. But it's just really funny. I had a look at both of the games. I'm just going to say it outright. Megalomania is 100% a Populous clone. It's that whole meme about your friend asks if you can copy your homework and you say yes, but don't make it look too much the same. Is that meme definitely that meme like 100%? Exactly.
Yes.
But I do want to say, like, this wasn't the first time this has ever happened in the gaming world, and it wasn't the last time. Okay. If you remember my tribute video that I did to 50 years of video gaming, Atari, or the makers of Atari, did it twice. Their first two games were clones. The first one, Computer Space, was a Space War clone. And Pong, well, that was a clone of a tennis game that Magnavox did. And while the first one wasn't successful, I know for a fact you know how popular and successful Pong became. Like, Pong became everything. Absolutely everything. So, I'm telling you, it wasn't the first time this happened, and it happened to really, really successful people. Now, thinking about also the modern setting, about this was also not the last time. If you think about the modern setting where someone copied someone else, resulting in success, is there anything you can think of, like any games you can think of that said, that game maybe copy that game?
It's a hard one.
It's let me put it this way, it's a genre both me and you don't like very much.
Probably look, there's a few genres I know we both like, but there's only really one I can think of right now.
Yes.
Some type of, I don't know. Well, okay, actually, that's not. No, I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a more, like, let's call it a speculative one. I would say people speculate, obviously, that Fortnite copied the concept of PUBG. Or the culling.
Okay.
Or whatever you think is the first one. You know, the whole thing about, the storm or some sort of impenetrable barriers closing you in. There's 100 people in a battle royale and they're all, killing each other. That whole concept. A lot of people argue that Fortnite did kind of copy this whole concept. Because when you look back on it, Fortnite didn't start as that. Fortnite started as some sort of zombie survival kind of cartoony game with a lot of building and stuff like that. And for it to go directly off track towards the battle royale and get so much success from it is a little bit weird. But people speculate that one. Another example, obviously.
There
Yeah.
Success from PUBG.
Yeah, but yeah, and you can see that. Another one, obviously, like late to the train, Activision came. They tried it once. They tried it with Blackout, which didn't go so well in the Black Ops 4 one.
Mm,
But then you look at Warzone, and I mean, Warzone's everything for some people now. Some would argue that
yeah.
some people, and you can see it even in their product, Warzone for them is sometimes now more important than the actual game they're bringing out that year. Look at Cold War and look at Vanguard, and tell me they cared about those games instead of Warzone that they kept updating for 3-4 years
Oh,
now.
yeah.
It's direct, like saying like
Also,
they're looking at the success of that.
a lot of the things in Warzone is extended from Call of Duty Cold War and so on. I mean, like the guns
Mhm.
and some aesthetics and so on.
That's literally what they use the game for. They slapped the single player experience in there, sure, and they slapped some zombies in there and stuff. But all they really wanted to say is, hey, now we have Cold War weapons in Warzone. Woo! And we have Cold War maps. Woo! And the same what they did with Vanguard. Oh, now we have World War II weapons in Warzone. Woo! And World War II
Yeah.
maps. Woo! They can do stuff like that.
Mhm.
If you can tell, I haven't played Warzone, so I might be talking completely rubbish here, but I can clearly see like Warzone they spend way more raw resources and time on Warzone instead of their yearly installment now.
I mean, most of the games coming down from the Warzone homepage, as I can say
Mm,
so. When you first go into Call of Duty, I mean, you can't even play one of the games without having Warzone installed.
exactly. You can't have Modern Warfare without Warzone, and that was the one thing that
Exactly.
annoyed me way back when, which is probably why I didn't get it. I know it was already big back then, but I was like, why do I want Warzone? I just want Modern Warfare or
Yeah.
something like that. And yeah, in the end, that's why I didn't get it, and I haven't been off COD since. So yeah, but yeah, let's get back quickly to Megalomania. As we said, it was a clone, but the changes it made to the copied homework to make it not look so much the same, that little bit of originality it sprinkled, eventually gave us the real-time strategy gaming genre. So
Yeah.
indirectly, they made an entire new gaming genre just by trying to not look 100% plagiarized, maybe just 80%. So yeah,
Mhm.
and this was solidified because Dune 2 came out the year after that, and the real-time strategy genre just and took off. Also, one
Yeah.
of those that really took catch my fire. Now, skill trees did start to gain some recognition here about what it brought to the table, but obviously we can't argue it. RPGs unlocked its full potential completely just because of how we discussed the play style, the replayability, the way that you can define your
Yeah.
character and have deep rewarding progression. Everything makes sense in that way for an RPG to use that. There were some early MMORPGs that did this in the beginning. There was Meridian 59 and Ultima Online, two long-running series of like MMORPG games that came out in '96 and '97, and they wanted to just make something really simple. So they said, "Okay, we have an online marketplace because it's an online game. So we have an online marketplace, and there's a lot of skills and talents and stuff you can buy off the marketplace. And essentially, you come here with your coin, you pay for a skill, your character learns the skill. Super easy, and people could still invest into skills and like say, "Oh yeah, I can like shoot 20 arrows now at the same time or whatever." Um, so this was all good and well. There was one big oversight, I would say, and it kind of ties back to the original point. You could now theoretically play as you preferred, but the skills and abilities were available to anyone. Like the game didn't care. Let's say, think about I don't know, think about Skyrim again. I'm trying to think of an
Mhm.
example here. Let's say, for example, the Argonians, right? The Argonians, the lizard people, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Traditionally, in the law, I think if I'm not mistaken, the Argonians are poison resistant naturally. They swim very well because obviously they're lizards and stuff like that. Now, that's
Yeah.
inherent skills to the Argonians. You can't just say that, for example, an elf is a naturally good swimmer or is naturally poison resistant. You can't just give that to an elf. Where this is the mistake they made it with the MMORPGs in the beginning. They said that regardless if you're an elf or an orc or a human or whatever, you could pay for any skill you want. And it's kind of a little bit overwhelming at first, because imagine now you take, let's just give a quick example. 50. Let's say you have 5 classes of people. There are 50 skills in total. You can either A, divide 10 skills between each one and have people level up and reward and get the skills. Or you can just let them pick any of the 50. Do you think it's going to be easy when you level up to level 2 to pick a skill out of 50?
No, it's gonna be really hard making a choice.
It's really going to confuse you because you just started playing the game. You just started, you don't know how you want to play yet.
Yeah.
Like, and you don't even know like what your character is capable of and stuff. Now you're just saying, oh, you could be anything. You like, regardless of your character. Yes, it's good to give people freedom of choice, but you want to make the freedom of choice mold into a playstyle, not just go. There's no point in a skill tree if that's your structure of it. Like, don't make it completely flat like this. It should go like a tree. It goes downwards. It branches out. Not this.
Yeah.
It's not a line. Have you ever seen a tree that does this? Maybe in Minecraft, if you leave a floating tree, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of the kind of place that got stuck on at first. And then there was a game that did realize this. In 2000, we got an idea of someone who said really clever, like, I do want the skill stuff that these MMORPGs have been doing now in the 90s, but I want to go back to the idea of the technology trees of the board game civilization in the 80s and the early 90s, and I want to put them all both together, and I want to make a proper skill tree with deep progression, with branching, with layers, with like investment and stuff like that. I'm really actually surprised I haven't mentioned this game series yet in 2000. This was done in 2000. Try and guess again. It's a gaming franchise that's had 3 big games. It was supposed to have a 4th game, and then when everyone was excited, like, "Ooh, it's number 4 of this gaming franchise," and then when they announced that it was a mobile game, and everyone cried. It's still the funniest thing to go look back on if you ever see the YouTube video.
No, I don't think so.
You'd have no idea.
Yeah, wait, repeat the last part of the free it was supposed to.
Oh, okay. So it started off as a free it was 3 games like this, and it's a good series. Like, it's really beloved by a lot of people. And then like they didn't do much for long, and it was like, oh, maybe number 4 is coming out, maybe it's not. And then like there was an announcement by the team, and everyone was losing their minds because they thought, oh my gosh, it's number 4. They've eventually done it. They finally done it. And then when it came out, they announced a mobile game, not number 4. They announced a mobile game.
Okay, which time period was this? Like,
When they announced the mobile game?
Yeah.
2018? 2019? I think was when they announced the mobile game. And the last game they made, I think, was 2008, 2007, number 3 of that series. I think around there.
Oh, this is a hard one.
It's really a hard one. I know. Like, if I tell you the series, you're gonna know it. But like, without knowing really the knowledge of the series, it's hard.
Oh.
Give me one guess, and then I'll tell you. Fortnite.
What?
Fortnite. No, I'm joking. It's not Fortnite.
Yeah.
No, obviously not Fortnite.
Yeah. Look, I know. Okay, this is gonna sound really stupid. But I know, Worms 4 was released on mobile.
I like your thinking, but it's not Worms.
But yeah, I don't think it's Worms.
It's Diablo. Diablo.
Oh, okay. The game on Xbox 360.
Yes, I promise you. Please, after this podcast, I beg you, please go watch the YouTube video of the Diablo Immortals announcement on live stream. I'm telling you, you watch the Twitch chat. Literally, you watch the Twitch chat, and everyone's talking about, "Whoa, guys, it's coming! It's finally here! Oh, it's like 10 years in the making and stuff." Because no one said that, and then they announced a mobile game, and you gotta watch that chat. How does it take
like 10 years to figure out make a mobile game and disappoint people so badly?
Like, I don't know what they were thinking. Why did marketing campaign? Literally, like, they were in a live crowd. This was at E3 or something. And I think one of the first questions the interviewer, like, they had people there and they said, okay, the public can now ask questions and stuff, about the game and stuff. What the first question? I think one of the first questions I got was, "Is this an early April Fool's joke?" It's so like you're gonna get so much secondhand embarrassment, but you have to watch it. It's so funny just watching that, and people die inside. But yes, Diablo
Yeah.
did this, particularly Diablo 2 in 2000, merged the two ideas together, and it exploded. You know that just ticked all the boxes in everyone, and something finally clicked. But yes, Diablo 2 did this, and if you look back, it's probably the best one out of the three in the series. I don't know, you've probably not played Diablo 2 because it was PC only, but it was
No.
really good for its time. It's just so innovative, and we're talking about it sold 1 million copies in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks in
It's
2000.
actually
This has not been done ever before.
and then it comes to disappoint people so badly
Yeah,
just a few years
full
later.
circle, full circle. But yeah, the rest of that is history. It didn't only contribute, obviously, to other RPGs taking up on that, but it's just, yeah, it's been revolutionary. World of Warcraft started doing that in 2004 again. Titan Quest in 2006. The Witcher did it. If you look at more RPGs, there's so many RPGs, and it talked about the revival actually of this mechanic in shooter games, because it did start to fizzle, as I mentioned. Like, you didn't have to do much, but then when they merged this, shooter games fought again. Aha, we're gonna do it again. And we're talking about games. Like I said, some did it right. Deus Ex did it interestingly. Bioshock did it. Borderlands does it extremely well because it goes so insane and over the top. Um, there's more games even. Watch Dogs does it really
Yeah.
kind of interestingly well, even as it's kind of a shooter or not. But like, there's a lot of shooter games that like do it cleverly, and it's just because of the conventional skill tree. Now, Far Cry even does it, and just other shooters do it also
Mm.
incredibly well. But you can even look
Yeah.
into the
A lot
more
of Far Cry
beloved.
games.
Yeah, the Far Cry games skill system is also really interesting. But you can even look into the more beloved skill systems that Bethesda rolled out in the 2000s, has having direct roots from here. And we talked about this already with Skyrim. It has this sort of tiered approach, tied directly to your skills. As you said, you pickpocket someone, your stealth or your pickpocketing goes up naturally because obviously you're practicing the skill, right? And that's also the thing of that. Like, if you were to level up, you could level up. Then what's the first thing you choose? I think you choose then an upgrade to your stamina, magic, or health. I think that's the first thing you do, and
Yeah.
then you have a skill point, and then you can go into the branches and then unlock a skill if your skill was a high enough level. So, for example, if you were one-handed level 50, like for example, you could swing maybe the weapon faster. I think that's how it worked. But it's a very
Yeah.
tiered system with a lot of deep reward because you keep playing as a one-handed person and you keep upgrading your stamina. Obviously, swinging your weapon faster is gonna do a lot of damage, and
Sure.
it's gonna bring a lot of reward to how you play in your playstyle. A very good
Yeah.
system. Not to be outdone, though, the interesting Fallout system also made its approach. Actually, wait, before I almost forgot about that. Skyrim did this interesting really, really well because this was also more open-ended than previous titles. I say this because if you look at Morrowind and Oblivion, they had class locking and limited skills, so that they were even more extreme than Skyrim, which said, you know how your Argonian or your Nord and stuff has some natural abilities and stuff.
Yeah.
Morrowind and Oblivion did this, like, say, for example, I think if your race was like, you can say, oh, you're a Nord, you can only use two-handed, and you can only do two-handed skills and stuff like that. They class locked it, where in Skyrim, they were more open-ended with it, a little bit more relaxed. Maybe you wanted to be a Nord archer, or a Nord stealthy boy, you were walking around. So it depends what you like, obviously, between those two systems, because a lot of people are vouching for, yeah, no, Morrowind and Oblivion was better, and other people are like, no, Skyrim was better. I can't have
Yeah.
an opinion on this yet because I haven't played Morrowind or Oblivion. I don't have a PC that can
Same.
really do that, unfortunately. But I would say I did like Skyrim's version of it, so I have a positive look on that. But yeah, not to be outdone, Fallout's perks system was also very interesting. Perks obviously standing for perception, endurance. What was R? Damn it! Or was it? No. It was the special system. I wrote this wrong in my notes. It was the special system because it was perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, luck, and S was strength. That's the special system. But yes,
Okay.
it serves a similar purpose. All those ones are listed. You start off with the game and you choose your attributes for all of them. You lock them in, like, let's say you just put all of them at 5 because you could. Then at level 5, up until level 5, you can unlock skills for each of the perks. You can have strength related like perks, or perception related perks, or endurance related perks up until the level. But obviously you did the same. You unlocked the levels when you leveled up and did certain stuff and all that.
Yeah.
And it mixed and matched a lot of RPG and shooter elements, because obviously Fallout's a more shooter game because it has guns and everything, and it has gunplay, but it has that more RPG element where you're still role playing in the sense of your post-apocalyptic survivor, and there's still playstyles to do everything. So it was really well done. And obviously the most wonderful one I think that did this the best is New Vegas. They just went ham with it, in the sense that I
Yeah.
think there was such funny things. Like you can have a melee build, and I think your punches were like double damage or something like that, and you can send people flying with just your punch, or you get these super fists and stuff like that. You can go stealth with the Chinese sword and stuff like that. It was just really well done, I think, in New Vegas and in the Fallouts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that little like push Diablo 2 gave way back in 2000, you can still see those ripple effects all over RPGs, shooters, any other genre. It's like done so much with just that little merge of the two concepts. Now let's look again at the modern times, and yeah, skill trees are everywhere, as we mentioned. A lot of genres that it's formed part of, both with like I think good and not so good consequences. I think one example, as you mentioned, Call of Duty, a shooter, they have skill trees, kind of. I say kind of because I feel like they kind of bounce around with the topic every game or so. They say, maybe you should make skill trees, or maybe you should not make skill trees. Now, if I think about the campaign, I did play it recently, so I can confirm. Advanced Warfare did have a really simple, really basic skill tree. I don't remember. You have like your exo abilities
Yeah.
and stuff that you can
I remember
upgrade
it.
after every mission because you earn some points during the mission and stuff like that. So it had a really rudimentary basic skill tree. I wouldn't say like it affected really all that much, but it was there. The other one, obviously, zombies also
Yeah.
had some sort of skills progression. The Gobblegum Machines being the most recent one, but also the way you can upgrade your guns and upgrade because you level up and stuff like that. Um, and kind of, as I said, it's mixed results out there because what they got. Because I think if we think about zombies, right? I want your thoughts on this as well. But if we think about zombies, I feel like that's a good game mode to have skill trees and stuff like that. Because zombies is kind of like it's refreshing because essentially, you know what zombies is like literally an endless wave mode. Literally endless wave of
Okay.
zombies. Every round is the same.
But
More zombies come and you have to survive.
okay, so let's take the idea of endless zombies.
Mm.
If you were to add skill levels to this thing, I would recommend actually setting the skill tree the thing. Otherwise, it could possibly
Just be too
I don't know,
overpowered in the
just
beginning or what? Well,
yeah.
think about it this
I
way.
just feel like it has to be set like I mean, otherwise, let's say you max everything out and you just start at level 1 every time. Just feels
Yeah.
like it's not really playing it anymore.
Now, well, to think about it this way, they do have some sort of resetting thing in place. Obviously, when we think about the most basic level of skills they have, the perk machines, the perk slots. You
Yeah.
have you can take
Yeah, that's
4 or
true.
5 perks maximum, something like that. Or 4 perks, right? You have to choose your 4
Yeah.
perks. Usually, some people do like to just take the 4s. They're comfortable with the 4 perks. Maybe it's Juggernog, Speed Cola, Stamina Up, and Double Tap. Maybe that's that. Maybe other people like Deadshot or Tombstone or um, Quick Revive or Jugs. Like they have the different playstyles, and it suits the playstyles. Like for example, you'd be more willing to take Quick Revive if you camp. If you train, you'd be more willing to take higher damage stuff like Double Tap, Stamina Up, because you need to run
Yeah.
faster or train more zombies. It suits playstyle. That's a very basic way of they doing skill levels. Other one, as we mentioned, the Gobblegum Machine. Now you can have your 5 Gobblegums equipped in stat, and you do get your Gobblegums randomly, either every time for you get one free like spin of the thing per round, or you pay for the gobblegums and stuff like that. But you also can upgrade your gobblegums, the power of your gobblegums, the effectiveness of your gobblegums. But they are sometimes limited. Like remember those really high end ones I got when we were playing together? and they were amazing, but I can only use it 3 times for 3 times we played
Yeah.
zombies. So the thing is, they do kind of soft reset it in a way, because
That's
obviously,
actually,
as you
yeah,
said, it would be overpowered.
that's actually very cool alternative for skill trees in a
In a shooter.
kind of repeating limited mode.
Yes, and I think when I agree, this is that's the right sort of mode to do it in an endless wave mode. You know, where the gameplay can feel very repetitive if you think about it, because literally what you're doing is, oh no, I have to kill all the zombies in the round, and like that's really what the mode is. And maybe there's 2 more zombies, or maybe there's 20 more zombies than before, but it's essentially just kill all the zombies in a round. That's what it is every
Yeah.
time. So having these skill trees and having this sort of skill progression is what makes it, I think, more rewarding and a fitting place. In multiplayer, I don't think it works all that well, to be honest. I think it can be pulled off, but I don't think you should have skill trees, for example, in a Call of Duty multiplayer. I don't think they've done it before. I don't remember them doing it before. But I think it's more fitting for what they kind of do now. They have a more stripped back version with it, where essentially they say what Gradius did all those years back. Instead of improving you, the skill trees, it improves what you use, the weapons. You either improve your weapon's performance by leveling up and getting to put attachments on it, or features, or maybe because you leveled up your weapon, it does a little bit more damage or a little bit more stuff. Battlefield did that, I think. If you leveled up your weapon and more, it did slightly more damage, slightly more rate of fire, slightly more that. And Call of Duty's on the other side. If you level up, you get attachments to put on your weapons, like a red dot sight, which is better for hip fire, or you can get a silencer, which is it's silent. You sacrifice a little bit of damage, but it's silent, and you get your perks like that and stuff. That's a very nice stripped back kind of Gradius-like approach to skills. I think that's perfectly fine for multiplayer. I don't think you'd ever come to a situation of an online multiplayer or even a shooter multiplayer in general where like you need an advanced deep skill tree, because you'd sacrifice your core component, the shooting, because everyone's going to be racking the brains like, oh, how do I make my character the best guy ever? What's the best skills, for doing anything?
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting concept, and I think game publishers and developers can have a crack at it, but I think shooters are perfectly fine as it is right now. Like, I don't think there's much to do. There is another example actually that does kind of bend these rules a little bit, and I want to talk about it because I'm really passionate about it. Ghost of Tsushima. I do hope that you get to play Ghost of Tsushima at some point, because it's really a really amazing game. But apart from that, it did have a skill tree of sorts. Now, remember the first part of the episode I said imagine you could get all the skills in a single playthrough. And everything happens, in the game. Like, everything happens the same way. Everything is done the same way. Ghost of Tsushima does exactly this. Without a lot of effort, without too much effort, you could get every single skill in the game possible. But they did something very, very clever here. They made
you basically get all the skills before it actually progress with the.
Well, you could get all the skills literally before the game ends, like before you finish with the main narrative.
I've seen most games up to date. They don't really that kind of force you to complete the game before you have all the skills unlocked.
Yeah, but this one it was entirely possible to get all the skills even before you finish the game. But the important part here is that they did something really clever, and that's that they stuck to their core component the most. The sword play in Ghost of Tsushima is amazing. It's so amazing. And it's amazing how they did it, because you have essentially 4 stances. You have a stance like this, you have a stance like this, I think you have a stance like this, and you have a stance like this above your head. And those 4 stances had all their skills and stuff. Now, what makes it so amazing is it flows so well. It's so fluid. It's so dynamic. Every sword fight you have or every duel you have feels way more dynamic, regardless if you have every skill in the game, because every sword fight just feels unique and organic, which means I can sword fight as many enemies as I want, or a group of enemies as I want, and it's going to feel so nice, regardless if I have all the skills or not, because it feels every time so organic. So it means that, like, I can play whoever I want to play. I can play with the water stance the whole time, or the moon stance, or the stone stance, or whatever. And I'm going to feel like unique every time that I want to keep replaying the game. or keep playing on the game. So they did it really right there. So it's possible, as I said, but in the beginning, you just have to be careful, as always, with how you
Yeah.
put into a skill tree. A good skill tree will make your gameplay that much better, and a bad skill tree may make your gameplay that much worse. That's just kind of the law of what it is, because it determines so much in your gameplay. And it enhanced everything for me, at least. Now, we have talked about almost everything under the sun right now regarding skill trees, except for the future of skill trees, what we think the future will be. But there is one last thing I want to mention that's kind of controversial, but it's kind of pushing me into an interesting direction of what we might expect in the future. Assassin's Creed Valhalla did something really controversial and interesting. Now, I'm sure you've noticed, and you've played a few Assassin's Creed games already. But the newer ones are more like RPGs than the older ones. If you remember, you played Black Flag. You remember Black Flag was like you were more of an assassin. You were eavesdropping. You were hiding in bushes. You were assassinating people, essentially, and all that stuff. Now, remember, you have Odyssey now. And you can see the difference right there. Odyssey is exactly like an RPG. You have dialogue in Odyssey. You fight enemies in a way more RPG style fashion. It's not like in the old Assassin's Creed where it's like, oh, you're in the shadows, and you can take them down like a bonnet and stuff.
The new one's way more interactive.
This one's way more interactive. It's much more, kind of say, like you forge your own narrative. You play RPG. You could play stealth. You could play like a combat role. It's exactly like an RPG.
Yeah, I mean, it's, Black Flag and those other games are actually just one way provided for you.
Yeah. Now, skill trees were there before in Assassin's Creed. I'm not going to say they weren't, because even as far back as the Ezio trilogy and stuff like that, you did have a little bit of a skill tree. It wasn't a skill tree more than it was skill progression. Your health would go up, maybe your assassination was better, and you get these abilities like throughout the game. Like you could double assassinate at some point. You could, you got a firearm you could shoot. It was like more skills progression. Now, obviously, being an RPG, stuff like the Assassin's Creed games like Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla now have skill trees, like proper big, deep skill trees, like RPGs normally would have. And now what's interesting about Valhalla's one is that what they essentially did was they made their skill trees semi-invisible. What I mean by that is you start out with a few skills that you can see, with a few branches, but you couldn't see past it because there was some sort of fog over the rest of the skill tree, or skill web, because they did more of a web structure. But essentially what happens, there was a fog. The fog wouldn't clear until you unlocked up until that part of the branch. So you didn't know what other skills were waiting down there up until you unlocked that path and invested skills into that.
That's interesting. That's a good way to force people to get some type of skill.
Or force people into a playstyle. A lot of people, it's a controversial divider topic because a lot of people are saying, no, I didn't want to be the stealth guy because look at the stupid skills he gets at the end. And I didn't know because I just leveled up my guy 15 times and now I can only see that he's got stupid skills at the end. So I don't want to do that. And other people are like, oh yeah, that's interesting because, it tells you have to go deep reward to get more skills and get more, like, invest more skills and stuff like that. So it's two sides of the coin, essentially. And I think it's an interesting thing they did. Obviously, not always knowing what skills you're going to get next is going to deliver some sort of surprise or some sort of, how do I say, kind of an unexpectedness. But maybe it's not an unexpectedness you want in your game, because maybe you want to say, I do want to specifically play this way and I do want to specifically have these skills, but now I don't know because I've just invested time in this thing and it might be the worst skills ever out there. So some people are divided on that. But I think it's interesting. And I think when we think about it, is there anything, when we look at skill trees now, like skill trees have come a far way enough. They've done a lot to skill trees so far. Is there anything we can think of that would maybe we would see in the future of skill trees? Maybe other genres pick it up? Maybe skill trees evolve more? Do you have anything you can think of?
Yeah, I think they'll probably evolve a lot more than they are now. I mean, there'll probably be more characters linked to certain skills. Like like I said, lights are linked to this particular type of skills and so on. Something in that line.
So a bit
And
more, nuanced with the characters, as you said.
yeah,
And I
and
think
it could possibly also become more part of a necessity than actually just a option.
yes.
Like you said, in Ghost, not Ghost of Tsushima, the last game where the fog clears, and if you have the particular
Valhalla,
skill,
yeah.
or was it? Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot more options. Like there is quite a few things. Like it would be really interesting if you can make it more deep than that. Like NPCs might have some skills that, like, when you interact with
Yeah.
them, their skills shine more through. But that's more of an individual thing, and that will
Yeah,
be a
and
really big thing.
actually, also a very good proposal is actually that your world can also change and be
Also
updated
change.
based on what skills you have,
Yeah.
and what your highest skill and so on.
Yeah. I think also, like, we've talked about it a little bit before, but I think we can go much further than we've done so far with skill checks. Now, skill checks, obviously, think of a game like even Skyrim or Fallout, just an easy skill check, like a lockpicking skill check. If you were to do a hard lock in Skyrim, it's entirely possible, but if your lockpicking
Yeah.
skill isn't that good, it's way more difficult to, like, lockpick a hard lock or master lock, because, like, the area you have to, like, jiggle the lock is way smaller, because of your lockpicking skill being less. So that's an interesting one. I think, like, we can make skill checks a little bit more dynamic rather than just having it flat, like, oh, 25 lockpicking skills mean this one's easy, 50 lockpicking skills, this one's easy, this one's easy, this one's easy. You can have it way more organic, saying, oh, this type of lock is maybe, like, harder for your lockpicking skill, or this type of lock is easier for your lockpicking skill because you did it this way, because you picked more locks of this sort, or you picked less locks of this sort. I think the other one that I'm really that I really wanted to see is degrading skills. So let's think of it this way, right? Are you still with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's think of it this way. Me and you are both right-handed, correct?
Yeah.
If you were to start throwing a ball and catching a ball every day, throwing a ball, catching a ball with your left hand, throwing a ball, catching a ball with left hand, every day for a long time. Now, science says you can never get as good at that as your dominant hand, right? It'll never be as good, but your left hand can improve, right? Let's say I'm doing that for 3 months onwards, and now I stop completely. 6 months, I'm throwing and catching a ball again with my right hand. Do you think my left hand is going to be anywhere near as good as it was 6 months ago? Because I didn't practice it. I didn't practice for 6 months now.
No. Well,
So,
I mean, it
could be.
If your muscle memory is still pretty much recognized, maybe, but in most cases, no.
Yeah, but that's the point I'm trying to get across, is some skills should degrade. It's not like
That's
I'm not
true.
trying to, like, I understand it's a game and you're trying to just keep it simple and stuff like that. But for example, if I didn't pick a lock in like 60 hours of game time, you can't tell me that I'm gonna like be instantly as good as I was 60 hours of playtime ago. And I'm not saying, like, don't make it a chore. Don't make it a chore and force me kind of like, oh, I have to lockpick now and then so I don't lose the skill or something. Just make it kind of very interesting, because, like, if you've been practicing your lockpicking, maybe you get to a certain point in the game where, oh, the lockpick's really useful, but now you haven't been practicing your combat. So if you lockpick the door and there's guards behind the door, you're gonna struggle because you didn't practice your combat, for example.
That's true.
And it could be much more dynamic than that. So I think there's still a lot to do with skill trees. Peanut saying thank you for the podcast, but yeah, I think there's just a lot more to do with skill trees. But we have to wait and see, sit on our hands, and see what they do. I think, yeah, a lot of genres have a lot of ideas. So yeah, we'll wait and see. But anyway, I think that's it. That's another episode in the books. I hope you learned a lot
with podcasts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this was also one of the most informative ones out there. So I'm really happy we got to do this one, and I'm really happy to be able to welcome you back to the podcast again. You have at least attended 4 out of 5, so still almost a perfect record. Almost a perfect attendance record. But anyway, yeah, that's it from myself and GetRektByMartie. Do you have any final thoughts, or are you good?
I'm just really curious to see how the skill things in this one improve, and maybe how I said, maybe get actually worse in some cases.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, however it turns out.
I think it's going to be gradual. We won't see it immediately, but we'll start to see some innovative stuff creep through. But again, yeah, that's it
Yeah.
from both of our sides. We really do hope that those of you who have listened or watched this podcast really enjoyed it, maybe stepped away from something to learn. And if there's anything you guys like to add or talk about, leave it in the comments below. If there's any more suggestions for episodes, leave it in the comments below. I'll be happy to read them. But until then, thank you guys really again for watching and supporting all this. We really appreciate it. This has been really fun. I hope you guys have a lovely weekend. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll talk to you guys next time.
Listening.